In this video, we will talk about how to add mixed numbers with unlike denominators. So I have two examples for us to work through here. Let's check out this first example. We have 4 1/6 plus 2 1/3. So we have one mixed number and we're adding another mixed number to it. So when we do these types of problems, I like to rewrite it by stacking the two numbers on top of each other like this. 4 1/6 plus 2 1/3. And when we write it like this, we'll notice that the fractions are stacked on top of each other and the whole numbers are also stacked on top of each other. So it makes it a little easier to add or a little easier to visualize. So the first step is we want to add the fractions. So 1/6 plus 1/3. How can we do that? Well, we'll notice that these two fractions don't have the same denominator. So this fraction has a denominator of 6 and this fraction has a denominator of 3. So we first want to find the common denominator between them. So the common denominator between 3 and 6, that's just the smallest number that both of those numbers go into. So that would be 6. So we want to rewrite these fractions to both have a denominator of 6. So we'll notice this fraction already has a denominator of 6, so we don't have to change it. But this fraction, 1/3, we need to rewrite it as a fraction with a denominator of 6. Now, to go from 3 to 6, what do we have to do? We have to multiply by 2. So whatever we do in the denominator, we also have to do in the numerator. So let's do 1 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. So 1/3 now becomes 2/6. And now we'll notice we can just do 1/6 plus 2/6, that's 3/6. And then lastly, we'll move on to the whole numbers and do 4 plus 2, that's 6. Now the last step is you just want to check if the fraction portion right here can be reduced at all. And this one can be reduced. So if we divide the numerator by 3 and we divide the denominator by 3, and the numerator we get 3 divided by 3 is 1 over 6 divided by 3 is 2. So our final answer is 6 1/2. So let's write that right here, 6 1/2. So 4 1/6 plus 2 1/3 is 6 1/2. All right, let's try one more example. We have 5 1/4 plus 3 5/6. How can we add these two mixed numbers together? Well, again, I like to start by rewriting them by stacking them on top of each other. So 5 1/4 plus 3 5/6. So again, the fractions are lined up, they're stacked up on top of each other, and the whole numbers are stacked on top of each other. So the first step is let's try to add the fractions. So 1/4 plus 5/6. Well, we'll notice that these two fractions, again, don't have the same denominator. So this fraction has a denominator of 4, and this fraction has a denominator of 6. So we want to rewrite these fractions so that they have the same denominator. So what is the least common denominator between 6 and 4? Or in other words, what's the smallest number that they both go into? Well, that would be 12. And if that's not immediately obvious, one way to figure it out is just list out some multiples of both numbers. So let's list some multiples of 4. So 4, 8, 12, 16, and then list out some multiples of 6. So 6, 12, 18, 24. And when you do this, you're just looking for the first number that appears in both lists. So that would be 12. So that is the least common denominator between 4 and 6. So what we can do is we can rewrite our fractions to both have a denominator of 12. So for this first fraction, to go from 4 to 12, what do we have to do? We have to multiply by 3. So whatever we do in the denominator, we also have to do in the numerator. So we need to do 1 times 3, which is 3. So 1/4 becomes 3/12. Now for this fraction, to go from 6 to 12, what do we have to do? We have to multiply by 2. So we'll do the same thing in the numerator. We'll do 5 times 2, which is 10. So now these two fractions have the same denominator, so they become very easy to add. So let's do 3/12 plus 10/12, that's 13/12. So let's write that right here. And then we'll move over to the whole numbers. We have 5 plus 3, which is 8. So we have 8 and 13/12. Now we'll notice that this right now is an improper fraction, meaning the numerator is greater than the denominator. So let's convert that to a mixed number. So the way we do that is we ask ourselves, how many whole 12s can go into 13? Well, that would just be 1. So we can rewrite this as 1 whole, and then how many are left over if we put a 12 into 13? There would just be 1 left over. And then we can rewrite it as a fraction with the same denominator, so we'll keep the 12 right here. So 13 twelfths is the same as 1 and 1 twelfth. So really what we have is 8 plus 1 and 1 twelfth, which is 9 and 1 twelfth. So let's write our final answer right here. 9 and 1 twelfth. So 5 and 1 fourth plus 3 and 5 sixths is 9 and 1 twelfth. So those were just two different examples of how you can add mixed numbers with unlike denominators.